Okay, so we are gonna go over chapter 8 today. It's a relatively short chapter. And then at about 11 or 10:55, we are going to go upstairs to Artemisia's. The baking and pastry arts students, they do not take the Chef 1300 class. They don't ever really get that experience of serving like everybody else does. So they're in a class called Plated Desserts, and that's what they're going to be practicing today. So you all are going to be kind of the managers and making sure that they're serving from the left and they're practicing, good table etiquette as far as, asking for the drinks and then going to get the drinks and then bringing out the appetizers. Now, I talked to Chef Brown and he's broken his class into 2 groups. And so half the group is going to sit down and the other half's going to serve. And then the other half will then sit down and they'll serve. It should go relatively quickly because they're not going to eat in between. They're literally going to drop the appetizers and then go back to the kitchen and get the entrees and bring them out. And then we'll switch groups. They'll do the same thing. And then they will we'll leave as soon as that's done. So we won't be there for the whole time. Just a couple of notes real quick. I did check the unit exam. I checked the final exam, and thankfully it is the exact same as it was last spring. So all the unit exam multiple choice questions are questions you're going to find on the final exam. Okay. I have made all of the exams due on April 27th. So basically a month from today. Obviously focus on chapter units 1 and 2, because that gets you up to chapter 7. And then 8 through 12 will be unit 3 exam. Okay. So you technically have all the materials to do units 1 and unit 2 exams. But again, they're not due until the 27th. Okay. You have 4 attempts on every test. I think you might even have 6 attempts on unit 2 because it includes a displacement analysis. So you have a little bit extra attempts to get the math on the displacement analysis. Okay. Any questions about the displacement analysis parts 3 and 4? Because I graded those this morning and it looks like most everybody did a pretty good job on it. So if you got the food and beverage side down, then you can go ahead and do the big 1 displacement analysis. Any questions about that? I saw some of y'all got mixed up a little bit on the steps 1 through 5. I will probably just go through and count that fully correct. Because if you get all the numbers correct, then that means you obviously know the steps. We're going to go over chapter 8 today. Do the pastry student observation. And then if we have time, we'll cover chapter 9. Okay. But let's talk about chapter 8. We're talking about demand generation. So we basically are trying to generate as much demand as possible. We have tactics and we have strategies. Which one is the long-term approach? Tactics or strategies? What do you think? Strategies, right? Because you think strategic, you're thinking in the future, right? Long-term. So tactics is how we react in the short term. Okay, changing our prices if we need to get more reservations, dropping that price in the short term is going to be that tactic. Okay. And then the strategy is things that we'll look at for the whole year or each quarter or looking out. Okay. So tactics, again, we want to maximize the revenue that we have right now, that we have access to. Okay. The tactics can be used because of our strategy, because of our strategic process. Okay. Whatever our plan is, the tactics are going to be used to help achieve that strategy in the end. Okay. So pricing is one of the tactical. We look at it very now with what's happening 1 day out, 3 days out, 1 week out. Okay. And then strategy, if we have a strategy, if we have a goal to maintain an ADR of 120 for the year, then we might look at strategy. We might be looking out, okay, right now, maybe we can drop that ADR below 120 because we know in the summertime, we're gonna be really busy. Okay, so right now, when it's really slow in between spring break and coming up here for Fiesta, our room rate might be 300 a night. Because we can ask that rate because of the demand, and people wanting to stay downtown. So in the tactical, we can change that pricing, that rate based on our overall goal. We still want to keep our overall strategy and goal in mind. With our strategy as well, we're not just looking at the room rate itself, but we're also looking at which markets. So, do we want to increase our association market presence? Do we want to increase our corporate market? And so looking at that might change our tactics in the short term in order to help achieve that goal. Is there someone else? Okay. All right, so when we talk about demand generation, again, what is one way that we can generate demand in our hotels? Okay, we can look at either having events at our hotel. Good, like, can you give me an example? Oh, yeah, absolutely. So they might have something like out by the pool, just to kind of, maybe attract people to come and stay. Excellent. Good. Anything else? Okay. So what do you mean by the amenities? Yeah, absolutely. Good. And then we also want to look at not just the room rate, but all of our revenue streams. So all of our amenities, spa, golf, all those different things. How can we make that more attractive to then help generate that demand? Okay. We'll talk about packaging in chapter 10. But we can put those packages together. So yeah, maybe we're gonna sacrifice a little bit on our room rate, but we'll do a spa package for the weekend, or we'll do a golf package. And so we'll get the revenue from golf and spa. Maybe we might sacrifice our room rate just a little bit, or maybe we don't sacrifice our room rate at all. And it's just one big package. They think they're getting the deal. And it's really just exactly what they would have paid if they had done everything individually, you know? And then we'll talk about distribution channel management. Basically, how do we get our demand out? How do we get our inventory out there? Okay. So with demand generation, we want to make sure that our product is positioned in the market in a way that people are willing to come stay at our hotel, and they're willing to pay the price that we're charging. So Hotel Emma, for example, anybody know what their going average standard rate is for Hotel Emma? It's between 700, like 550 and 750 for their standard room, just a basic standard guest room, and then 800, and then their suites can get up to 12 to 1500 a night. And they basically have positioned themselves as a luxury boutique hotel that allows them to, whether the level of service that they're providing, the location where they are, allows them to kind of help generate that demand. And one of the things that we're talking about is we're going to focus on is differentiation. What is the root word of differentiation? Different. So what makes you different? What makes your hotel different from your competitors? Okay. Yeah. It's in an old historic hotel. It's an old historic building, and they kept a lot of the natural, or they kept a lot of the same features of the original building. It kind of adds to that element of what other hotels don't necessarily have, especially if it was like a brand new build. So differentiation strategies, we're going to be looking at unique features, the level of service, location, and brand affiliation. Okay. So we're going to continue this conversation when we come back from upstairs. So let's head up to Artemisia's. recording. All right, so just to recap real quick, chapter 8, the unit exams that you have on Canvas, unit exam 1, 2, and 3, they're all going to be due on April 27th, a month from now, okay? The multiple choice questions from those exams are going to be from your final exam. Okay, so it's kind of like a study for your final exam at the same time as taking those unit exams. Okay, so you have a month to finish those 3 tests. Unit 1 and 2, we've already finished. Unit 2 ends with chapter 7, and then unit 3 is 8 through 12. Okay, so we're going to go over chapter 8 today. We talked a little bit about if you missed the first part, you can go back and watch the first part. But we're talking about different tactics and strategies in which we can generate demand in our hotels. So basically generate demand and differences. And one of the biggest things that we're going to be looking at is this concept of differentiation. Okay. And the root word in differentiation is different. Okay, so what makes our hotel different that positions us in the market that makes people want to come stay at our hotel? Okay, so different features of differentiation. We have unique features, level of service, location, and brand affiliation. Okay, so we talked about Hotel Emma. And what's a unique feature of Hotel Emma? It's in the administration building of the Pearl Brewery. It's in that original historic building, right? That's a pretty unique feature. What are some other unique features that you can think about? Or what's some other unique features that might make hotels stand out from one from another? What's that? Well, so the expense, the price that we're charging for our rooms are based on these different things, right? So the fact that it's in that historic building, the level of service of Hotel Emma. Now, brand affiliation, Hotel Emma is not affiliated with a brand. It is a independent hotel. When it first was under contract, it was going to be part of the Kimpton Hotel brand. Kimpton, there's a lot of Kimptons in like California. It's a very luxury boutique brand. For whatever reason, they backed out, and then the owners decided to go ahead and just go independent. So just different differentiation strategies. Let's keep going with unique features. What are some potential unique features? Okay, so what about the hill country? Because the hill country would be location, right? That's the location of where it is. But what could be some unique features about a hotel in the hill country?
I guess location, something with more open space.
Okay, so open spaces. There's a hotel out in kind of northeast Texas, kind of north, I don't know, it's north of Austin, but it's south of Dallas. And it's called Fossil Rim is the name. It's kind of like the whatchamacallit, the Natural Bridge Wildlife Ranch, where you can drive through and you can feed animals, exotic animals and stuff. But they also have lodging there. So if you have like a little cabin there, then zebras could be walking by your cabin at any given time, right? Animals could, not obviously dangerous animals, but animals could just literally be walking by. That's a pretty unique feature that you're not going to get if you stay at the La Quinta in the same city. What else? What's that?
The New Kids Resort, right?
New Kids?
No, I can't think of the name. You were talking. Yeah.
Oh, the Kalahari Resort. Yeah, absolutely. There's one up in Round Rock, right? Holy cow. I went there to visit a friend, and they're like, we're going to the Kalahari Resort. And I'm like, well, okay, why are we going to a hotel? Which is weird that I'm the one saying that. But we went, and I had more fun
than her her little kids did. I was like, let's take this picture, let's do this picture. And then it was interesting because then we went in and they have a whole kind of like main event Dave and Buster's type game room. And we did the mirror maze. And as we were leaving, her husband was like, I didn't ever think we could just come in here and do this. Like, I was like, yeah, that's what they're hoping, because they can't just rely on everyone who's staying at the hotel to take part of those activities. So yeah, that unique feature is pretty unique. What else? Any other ideas? Good. Absolutely. Like Great Wolf Lodge, JW Marriott has a giant water park out there. So pretty, what's that? Yeah, casino would be a unique feature. Absolutely. Good. The amenities, golf courses. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Underwater hotels. Yep. I've seen some of those before. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. So those would be definitely unique features about that hotel that will make it different and might attract people to come and stay. The level of service. So what is level of what are examples of level of service? Full service, limited service. Okay, so that level of service can play a role in it. A friend of mine, she used to own the Comfort Suites downtown, and right before she sold it in December of 2019. And so, but right before she sold it, she was considering dropping, because she was the owner of the hotel, she was considering dropping the Comfort Suites brand and just making it a luxury boutique, no brand affiliation, just an independent hotel, because there were things that she couldn't do because it was a Comfort Suites, right? She wanted to have a full service restaurant, but the Comfort Suites brand was like, that's not part of our brand standard. You can't do that. And so she was considering changing level of service to attract different people. One of the unique features about her hotel, when she built it, is she knew the market one of the markets she wanted to go after was school groups and cheer groups and competition groups, right? And so she put more, I think she had 80% double beds and only 20% king beds, because her thought process was, you can always put one person in a room with two beds, but you can't put four people in a room with one bed. And so her market that she wanted to go after, so she deliberately designed her hotel in the sense that she wanted to go after more school groups and make it more attractive. So that was a pretty unique feature, that she had more double beds than king beds. The other unique feature could be like Embassy Suites. It's an all suites property. There is no room upgrade because all the rooms are exactly the same. They're all suites. Location, we talked about Hill Country. What are some other ideas of how location can play a role in differentiation? In the suburbs? Okay, yeah. There's not a lot of hotels out in a specific area. You might consider building a hotel there. Okay, what else? Yeah, so the location based on where it is to an attraction, like beaches or SeaWorld or Six Flags or the Riverwalk, right? So the location of where that hotel is can also play a role in the differentiation. And then brand affiliation, what is that? Yeah, exactly. So if it belongs to Marriott, Hilton, if it's a branded hotel, okay? I think I've mentioned this before, but so these are two charts. This is from an assignment that I did while I was in grad school, and they were talking about differentiation. And one of the topics, I found this article from the San Antonio Business Journal, and the journalist basically gave this table right here. And this table up here said basically the top 10 hotels based on revenue. Okay, so from top to bottom, 1.1 million all the way down to 629,000. Okay. So the gentleman from Business Journal is writing about hotels. And the only reason I can say this because I actually know the person. He doesn't know anything about hotels, right? So he's writing this article about hotels, but he doesn't understand necessarily. He's looking at it just from a business perspective, right? And so if I look here, we have Holiday Inn Express, and Hampton Inn. Okay. So those three are the only three that are branded. Everything else is an independent hotel. Now, these are down in what's called the Eagle Ford Shale area. So south of San Antonio, that area, once they started fracking and getting more natural gas and whatnot from that area, hotels started popping up like crazy. And so these three hotels are branded. The other 7 are not. Okay. And so when I was looking at that data, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But it makes sense that number one has $1.1 million because they have 232 rooms to fill. The Holiday Inn only has 70 rooms. They couldn't make 1.1 million because they have almost a third. They have a little less than a third of the total rooms they have to sell for the InstaLodge, right? And so I took the same data, I reworked it, and I did it based on revenue per available room. So remember, revenue per available room puts those hotels on a little bit more level playing field, right? Because it's basically the revenue that I have based on the rooms that I have available to sell. And so in this case, once we looked at that, check this out, 1, 2, and 3. Holiday Inns moved from the very bottom 2 to the top 2 and 3. Or, yeah, sorry, 3 and 4. Okay. And so even though the InstaLodge hotels, they only had a $55 average or revenue per available room, from a revenue perspective, the Holiday Inns actually and the Hampton Inn actually performed better than the InstaLodge did. I mean, the Hampton Inn was at 118. They got 118 on average per room, revenue per available room. They only got $55. The one that's kind of crazy is this one right here. The remote lodging and logistics, $28 revenue per available room. And they have the most number of rooms to fill, 256. The other thing that I took this data as I analyzed it and I refigured it for revenue per available room, it made me realize, again, these are the only 3 branded hotels. What is the benefit of having a brand attached to your hotel? They know the quality of the brand. Yep. What else? All of your standard operating procedures, all your training guides, all of that stuff is already done. If you have an independent hotel, who's coming up with that? The owner or the GM, or if it's your hotel, you have to come up with that information. Whereas the branded, granted, you remember when we were doing the displacement analysis, how we had to pay a franchise fee and a marketing fee? That's part of having that franchise, but that means I don't have to market my hotel. When you see a commercial for Holiday Inn Express, I didn't have to pay for that, but because I have a Holiday Inn Express brand, people are going to see that and they're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go stay at that Holiday Inn Express. The brand standards, like Logan mentioned, is understanding the quality. Okay. So sometimes there are some benefits of doing that and having that brand. The other thing is Hampton, for example, 11868. If I'm sending somebody down there for 2 weeks at a time or 3 weeks at a time, right? Free breakfast in the morning. I don't know if these other hotels have complimentary breakfast. I know Holiday Inns and Hamptons do, so I don't have to pay somebody for their breakfast. It's already included at the hotel. But also points, loyalty points. We could also maybe even negotiate with Hilton or Holiday Inn, which is IHG, Intercontinental Hotel Group, we might be able to negotiate contracts to say, hey, this is what we want to pay. Most of these hotels are going to be for people that are working in the oil fields for extended periods of time. So any questions about how brand affiliation can play a role in differentiation? Do hotels ever change brands? They do. The Wyndham Hotel, which Wyndham is actually Wyndham, which now actually owns La Quinta as well. But the Wyndham Hotel downtown, the Riverwalk, used to be a Crown Plaza, which is part of IHG. And before it was a Crown Plaza, it was an Adams Mark Hotel. I don't remember which brand that falls under. So it went from Adams Mark to Crown Plaza to Wyndham. And I think now it's going to an Intercontinental. So a full service. Intercontinental hotels are kind of on the same level of Hyatts and Hiltons as like the full service hotels within the IHG group. Any questions about chapter 8 and differentiation? Okay, so for your assignment for chapter 8, we're going to do a discussion post, okay? Spring 23. And your discussion post is going to be an article about differentiation. Okay. And I mean, you could also just find a unique hotel. It doesn't necessarily have to be an article. It could be an article about that hotel. Okay. But you could also, as you're doing a search, like hotels with unique features or whatever, you could use their website as your reference point. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an article, but I want you to find something about and you'll have to decide whether it is the differentiation strategy being used is unique features, location, level of service, or brand affiliation. Okay. It can be multiple. It doesn't have to just be one. They can use multiple strategies. Okay. So you're going to find an article. You're going to write a summary. Don't just copy and paste from the article. Read it and then put it into your own words. Okay. And then after you've summarized it and how it can generate demand, is you're going to identify which type of differentiation is being used. Okay. What is the perceived value? Because ultimately value is the biggest key, right? We could have an underwater hotel, but if nobody wants to stay in an underwater hotel, there's no value. Or if they're not willing to pay the price, then we're just an underwater hotel that nobody stays at, right? And so that differentiation has to create some kind of value, okay? Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. So if you can find an article about it, great. So technology, there's always a kind of ways to have those unique features with technology. Okay. So what's the perceived value? Do you think it's actually a value? Okay. And then make sure you post the link to your article, because then what you're going to do is you're going to then go back and read two of your classmates. Oh, sorry, one other classmate's posts. Okay. And read their post and comment on it. You can't just say, I agree with you. Okay. It has to be a thoughtful response. Okay. Any questions about this assignment? So this is gonna be due next week on Thursday. Okay, so try to make sure you get your articles done in the next day or two. And then that way you can start responding to your classmates. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about chapter 8, differentiation. Please don't just go with the first thing that comes up. Okay. Do a little bit of research, take some time. And then that way you'll in the meantime, I think that's one of the things that I learned about doing research in my master's program is that although I may not use that article, that first one that I clicked on, I've at least read something about it and I've enriched myself. And then I'm going to move on to something else, right? So it's not that it's not valuable information, it's just maybe not exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, so don't always just go with the very first one. All right, so chapter 8 is done. Next week, we're going to go over chapter 9. And for now, we're going to go downstairs and have lunch.